Hey, I want your cray-cray. Hey, I want your AKA Jonescast. Hello and welcome once again to the Jonescast. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. So glad you could join us yet again. Welcome to Jessica Jones, Season 2, Episode 2, a.k.a. Freak Accident. Jessica sets out to find Dr. Kozlov and makes a startling discovery. Trish recruits Malcolm for backup as she visits a figure from her past. Director Mark Spiro, writer, of course, Brian Michael Bendis, created the character of Jessica Jones. Melissa Rosenberg gets our created by credit, and Ada Mashka Carroll gets our written by credit. This episode. No hardest working person in show business this week. No story editors, no staff writers, just a writer and a creator, and the actors who make it all come together. Okay, this episode, how does this episode open up? You know,
she's at the bar.
She's at the bar, that's right. And I can't tell, was that Rosie's bar from Daredevil, or was this a completely new bar?
I don't think it was that bar.
Yeah, it had the Christmas lights up.
Right.
And here's what I'm going to tell you. She's doing real well for herself if she can afford to drink in a bar. Straight whiskey like that, leave the bottle, that is good money. And she's snide with the with our bartendress, who's just trying to do her dang job, man. Doesn't want some drunk superhuman smashing up the place. And she gets a gentleman compliment her on her intrinsic beauty.
And she takes it as such.
Well,
although she wouldn't let it on, yeah. But she takes it as such.
Well, she takes it as, well, you're good to go and I'm good to go. And they decide to go. And he is, let's just say he's no Luke Cage. And he gets freaked out, and she ends the moment, and he says he was so close, and she says, well, not me. And that is I think, a great setup for this episode.
Who do you think gets close by the end and who doesn't?
Well, this episode, I think, is where I think everyone gets close. I think that both Jessica and Trish get close to the truth just to have it ripped away at the last second.
Right.
Right. And I think that's what it comes down to this episode. We also get, a lot of things going on here. Of course, we see that Jessica and we see Jessica has sort of cleaned up her office. She's got her brother in a baggie now, along with.
Yeah, at first when I saw the bag, there was that cryptic text that Malcolm receives earlier, and I see a giant bag with a brown powdery substance in it. I thought, oh no, he's going back to the heroin. Although that's a lot of heroin.
That would be a lot of heroin. That would be an insane amount of heroin. Yeah.
And then it dawned on me. I was like, "Oh, it's probably her family's ashes." So it was like, okay,
that is, I believe, it's supposed to be her brother's ashes because I believe that was her brother's ashes that got spilled on the floor.
Gotcha.
She does find Dr. Kozlov this episode. Well, sort of.
What's left of him?
Yeah, she finds out that he was the victim of a freak accident.
Right.
These freak accidents happen a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
Scaffolds falling on people, cars hitting people.
And you get the sense that he wasn't the top of the pyramid either.
Mm-hmm.
That he was just somebody expendable also, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, isn't that always true for the mad scientist henchman?
That's true.
You hire a mad scientist, and
But sometimes the mad scientist is the evil genius and bad guy. But this time it wasn't. He's not the ultimate bad.
Very rarely, the last real. I mean, you have Doctor Doom, who, yes, he is a mad scientist, but he's also the king of Latveria. And then you'll have a guy like Dr. Otto Octavius, who's a mad scientist and the lead bad guy, but it's not like he's building a grand conspiracy.
Right.
If someone's building a grand conspiracy, usually it's usually just some sort of power broker who has another sideline. The only person who's really just a mad scientist and sort of the big bad, I think, is probably who's that guy from Fawcett Comics? Doctor. Oh.
I don't know.
He's a bald guy. He's Captain Marvel's main antagonist. Doctor. It's something will start with an S, and it's like an SV kind of name, but. Anyway.
Well, I'm sure we'll all know it, before too long.
Yeah, but that's okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we've got the Captain. No, not that Captain Marvel. The original Captain Marvel.
Oh.
Yeah. No. Captain Marvel from Marvel. That's a different Captain Marvel. And in fact, originally it was Captain Marvel, and then it gets pronounced as Captain Marvel, and then the Captain Marvel we're going to be seeing, Carol Danvers, is actually they're doing a major retcon on her entire story because she's completely bypassing the entire Ms. Marvel era of her career. Because she was Ms. Marvel for decades until they decided to say, why don't we just call her Captain Marvel? And someone said, yeah, sure, why not? And so she gets to be Captain Marvel. But no, the actual Shazam Captain Marvel, Doctors... Man, I know it's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't even remember it. I'll remember it as soon as I hang up, but that's okay. We'll talk about it next episode. Anyway, but yeah, so Dr. Kozlov is dead, and he is surrounded by other heroes and kind people who love this man, and goes into this wonderful aspect of people's lives, where... No matter what he did, people knew him as a good person. And no matter what he did, on some level, there were honorable intentions. Somewhere in all of this, there was a man trying to make the world better. And you always think about a guy like Dr. Erskine in Captain America. Who, he's making a super weapon.
Right, but for us.
Well, for humanity, arguably. Arguably, the idea was to find a way to basically have eugenics without eugenics, if you want to be rude about it. But the idea is, if we could just make people, make everybody powered. Sort of the opposite of the syndrome view, where syndrome says once everyone has powers, once everybody is special, then no one will be. Overlooks the fact that, but now everybody's special. And wouldn't that be a great world if everybody didn't live with pain and difficulty, and people could actually live a healthy, long life, and everybody could contribute, and nobody was less than. Wouldn't that be a nice world?
I don't think the human condition allows for that. I don't think our behavior patterns would ever allow for that, given enough people and enough points of choice to be made. I don't think that's possible.
Well, it's the basic Star Trek conundrum. What do you do in a world where all of the old laws that dominated our hatreds have been done away with? When you have replicators that you no longer have to worry about scarcity, when you have so much diversity that, quite frankly, maybe we can't all worry so much about who someone else is. There's this counter argument.
I just don't think you can ever do away with the grotesqueness of ambition and how it takes hold on our psyches on some people's psyches and what it can propel them to do. I think that dynamic is impossible to cordon off or to contain.
But there's perhaps a counter argument in that, which is that, yes, there may be some people's psyches that are unable to be contained by lack of want. But you have to remember, the whole reason why these people are powerful in our world is because of want. Essentially, Hitler, in a well-fed, not economically depressed Germany, is just some idiot on a street corner.
Right.
He's just one more nut on the internet, and maybe he could cause some real damage if he ever just goes off on it. But he's not going to raise an army.
Well, right, but I mean, damage can be caused also by capitalistic means, by business.
Well, certainly, and that, but of course, the whole point of business, and this is the Star Trek point, is that once you create a technology where you eliminate want, the power capitalism has over you is limited. This is one of the interesting things. This is what I always say about the Ferengi world. That it isn't that. Yes, it is this capitalistic society, and yes, it is theoretically a world with poverty. But goods are so cheap that even in a world with poverty and economic inequality, nobody necessarily starves.
Interesting. So you don't think that there would be the possibility of somebody seeing the wealth of resources and wanting to obtain them in order to commodify them so that they could subjugate people and have more power?
Well, this is the basic. There's a great comic book series from the '90s called Open Space, and it's basically about the invention of the Smoot drive. And what the Smoot drive does is it teleports you basically 1 micron. Basically, using quantum tunneling technology, it allows every quantum particle of you to quantumly teleport that 1 micron. Which is nothing, as he says, it's not even a smoot. It's just a thing. But there was no limit on how often you could do this. So suddenly you can just do this teleport, and technically you're standing still. But now you could actually traverse the cosmos very rapidly because you're just, doing this quantum teleportation thing like, a trillion times per second. And now you've actually gone a distance. And the thing was that the technology was very simple. And, of course, the whole point of this story is that, of course, the megacorps send people in to kill the scientists, but then he puts it on the internet. Yay, free internet. This was the 90s, kids. We used to think about stuff like this. And then suddenly this very simple technology gets out there, and suddenly everyone can have a smooch drive, and suddenly space is open, people can travel throughout space, and nobody gets to own it. And you still have all kinds of capitalistic issues and capitalistic problems, and political corruption issues, but you can move forward.
Right. So I think what it in the end comes down to is you can't wait for that sentiment in people to die or to eradicate that emotion. All you can do is manage it, acknowledge that it's there, that it is a part of us. Don't try to deny it. That's where the problem comes in. Yeah. When you try to deny our basic nature and say that this ideal world should exist and bad shouldn't exist, but it does. Yeah. And it is in our capacity to do so. And all we can ever do is manage it. We can't eradicate it ever.
No, but the best way to curtail it is to make sure that resources aren't limited. So if only the wealthy of the world can get superpowers become a problem. But if superpowers can be made cheap and efficient, and anybody can get them, suddenly having superpowers is no longer makes you one of the privileged few. One of the most interesting things that you kind of get in the Marvel Universe is this idea of how there is this superpowered elites. Your Reed Richards, your Tony Starks, your Captains America. These people who are occupying this rarefied world, who are making these major global decisions, and how much that can cause problems for people. And you realize, Brian Michael Bendis again, I believe it was Bendis, created the Cabal, not the Cabal, but the Illuminati, which was this organization made up of Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Black Bolt of the Inhumans, and Namor the Submariner, as well as Professor Xavier, on the idea that they were the leaders of these various factions in the world. So that here's the most important mutant in the world. Here's this most important Atlantean. Here's the King of the Inhumans. Here's Tony Stark and Reed Richards, the two smartest men on Earth. And here's Doctor Strange, the master of the mystic arts. And they get together to sort of discuss how to guide humanity. And they do it in a closed room, and this causes no end of problems for the superheroes and the public later, and that's how Norman Osborn came to be the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes. It gets crazy in the Marvel Universe sometimes, but I liked it. Anyway, so getting back to the actual story.
I think from there we're taken to Trish and her boyfriend having brunch with her mom.
Yeah, and again, I do love her boyfriend. Like I say, I'm really hoping he's Damon Hellstrom. I'm really hoping that we do find out that he is the son of Satan later on. At some point, that is my deepest, fondest hope, and I haven't given up hope on it yet.
Yeah, it seems like they're from a writer's perspective, like how they're doing this character is very interesting.
Yeah.
They're not giving us a much elaborate look into who he is, where he came from. He's just there, set in place to activate a plot device later on. That's what it feels like.
Well, what I feel for him is that he's this guy who's presented as the too good of a guy. If he's too good of a guy, there has to be a problem.
Right.
And because here's the thing, I don't think he's a character worth writing out of this series. So even if we don't get this big reveal yet, I think that he'll be around in season 3, assuming he doesn't die before the end of this season.
Well, it's sort of similar to what we see in this episode.
Well, yeah. Well, he doesn't die.
Character coming back.
Oh yeah. He comes back thinking, Yeah, Oh yes, and of course yes, we get our Will Simpson coming back.
Yeah.
Does Will Simpson make it up? No, he does not. He does not make it up in this episode. No.
I was so happy to see him back.
I know.
To get faked out into thinking, oh no, he's the monster, and turns out no, he's still the same old good guy Will Simpson, and then to snatch him away again. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, well, they like to play with your expectations, which is why you can't trust anything. I believe this is the episode where we do get Maynard Tybalt called out, if I'm not mistaken, or was that last episode? Maynard Tybalt, because Maynard, I know that he doesn't actually make an appearance. He does make an appearance in this series. I think it's.
I think I remember the name from last episode. Who was he again?
He is the hypnotist ringmaster. And honestly, the minute I heard that name, I'm like, oh, he has got to be important in this story. He may not be. We'll see what happens. Because, like I say, they do like to play with our expectations.
Right.
But yeah. Oh, where was it? But anyway, so, and I'm just trying to coordinate everything. Another thing we get in this episode is, before we get to, because there's a lot that goes on here, without a doubt. We have the police, asking Jessica about poor old Whizzer.
Right.
And there's a great bit there where Detective Sunday says, boy, that he came to you for help and you couldn't help him. You must feel awful. And then they mention that, he had come to them and he says, boy, you must feel really awful.
Right.
She does go to Whizzer's apartment.
Yeah.
And finds that he was speaking to someone. via a recorded Skype, where for some reason he only recorded his. Well, maybe he's doing a video email, but honestly, as an exposition device, it is useful. But the whole time I'm seeing this, I'm thinking, okay, it's not a two-way video Skype, because then we'd see who he was talking to.
Well, no, I think they sort of give us the reason as to why that's there. He's probably waiting on posting that video on a message board, because she goes to the message boards on Trish Talk, Jess does, when she finds his laptop and sees that he posted another video on a message board in response to something. So that's sort of was enough for me to think, okay, he created this video, he's going to post it, and he hadn't yet. That's what I thought.
Okay, that makes sense. 'Cause, see, I haven't been on message boards in years. The last message board, I used to go on message boards a lot, but when I did it, it was just text, because we were old-fashioned people. We would type a response on your message board. Now, basically, my message board is Facebook, That is like... I think it, Facebook killed the message board the way that Craigslist killed the want ad. It's... There's, now... All of my friends who talk about comic books come to me, and we talk about comic books on the internet. And sometimes we'll talk politics too. And then I can also say, "Here, my kids, ain't they cute?" But anyway, yeah. So so he's posting that to Facebook, and to this message board, and he. He's talking to someone, and it seems like that this is to a person.
I felt like maybe he was talking to Trish.
See,
because in the other video on the message board, he says, "Thank you for blah, blah, blah." So it seemed like in that video, at least he was saying thank you to Trish for taking on his cause or their cause,
Well, yeah, and that is true. But when he's talking about, we have to tell the real truth about this, I don't know. Part of me thinks he's speaking to someone affiliated with the project.
Right.
That's someone who knows about the project from the inside. Who that is, we don't know yet, but,
And why didn't they show us this supposedly scary mongoose?
Oh, what, Emil? Oh,
yeah.
Do you know how much a mongoose wrangler costs on a...
So that's what got me thinking. What if the mongoose is the creature, and he's been keeping it, but he can't keep it contained? That's a silly theory, I know.
Honestly, it's a brilliant theory. I would wager that if you pitched that in the Jessica Jones writers' room, that someone might have gone with it. But or at least the idea of giving the mongoose superpowers might have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's a talking mongoose now. No. But you've seen the third episode, right?
I have not yet.
Oh, okay. So, because I thought we were going to talk about episode 2 and 3 tonight. So.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just doing 2 tonight. Okay, that's fine. We'll do 3 next week. So that's good, because I only did a cursory view of 3.
Okay.
But I know what happens in it, and but we won't talk about it. But I know where it starts and where it ends. So yes, watch 3. It gets interesting.
Okay. I thought this episode was really sort of like the breakout episode where everything is set in motion, and now you're invested. Now you have sort of a pulse on what the mystery is, who some of the players are, and you're very intrigued. I think that's what this episode was for me. And it ratcheted up the action a little bit, too.
What do you think about Trish's interaction with Max?
It's so funny. A lot of these Marvel shows are trying to be very with it, very current, very relevant to what's going on today. So I thought that was interesting. It's a tough subject to handle. It's a tough scene to handle, that confrontation, and how much you bring to it, and whether or not you're nailing the scene relative to what's really important in the way we're talking about this stuff in our culture today, or if it's just a cursory thing that you pass over just as a plot device. So it's a delicate balance of play, because it's a pretty serious and heavy subject to sort of play with here. And it was interesting watching that confrontation and how she confronts him. It was definitely a little uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, and of course, what it is it is an interesting play on it, because especially when you bring into the concept of Trish and her relationship with her mom.
Right.
which, you know, is what sets this in motion when she's having brunch and she says, and you can see her mom is like, why do you want to talk to Max? We both know who that is. And if you look at it from this perspective that Max, or not, that her mom is trying to be a better person.
No, I think she just does not want to be confronted by her own bad decisions from the past.
Well,
so she wants to leave it there where it is because she's trying to rebuild a relationship, and she does not want to see the old version of herself that pimped her daughter out, and she does not want to see that in herself anymore, and that's embarrassing. So that's why she wants to keep her away from that.
Well, okay. Yeah, so you see it as a purely self-serving thing that she wants to keep
Oh,
away
yeah.
from.
I do not see the mom as anything but self-serving.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. And there's arguments to say that is straight out of the comic book.
Sure. Well, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, there's a whole thing in the comic books later. It's not spoiling anything in this episode, but just so you know, just to give you some backstory, Jessica's mom actually sold Jessica's soul to the devil.
Oh, Jesus.
To get the fame that they
got.
Oh,
wow.
Oh, yeah. There is, crazy. She was in a cult and nonsense, which is why I sometimes wonder if that is why I think that, you know, the boyfriend whom the mom loves.
Right.
It may well be Damon Hellstorm. Or Hellstrom. So that's
interesting.
And you know what? Here's what I'm going to tell you. He comes off as a good guy, but he is the son of Satan. And
so maybe in this retelling, instead of selling Jessica's soul, she sold Trish's soul.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, she sold Patsy's soul. That's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow.
So she gave the cult, and then of course, and then of course, it takes the might of the Defenders, the comic book Defenders, not these Defenders. Though, hey, if you do Defenders 2, Electric Boogaloo, that's what we can do. We can try to save Trish's soul from the cult of. Yes, we can save Trish's soul, but that could be our plot for Defenders 2. We're pitching it here. Netflix, if you're interested.
You know what scene I liked with Max the most was the scene with Malcolm. After Malcolm decks him and breaks his nose, you see him walking away, and you can see it. He's the bug for vigilantism.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
he walks away. He's got this smile, this self-satisfied smile that I don't think you've ever seen on him. He's never been more proud of himself than he was in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Because I think that there is this, you know, one of the things this show deals with is addiction. And looks at addiction in such an interesting way about how there is the addictions we all recognize, you know, drink and drug and whatnot. But there are also these other things like self-righteousness, which is, of course, the crux of vigilantism. And, you know, the desire for power, which is something that I think we're going to see throughout this, you know, and how superpowers play within that idea of seeking that desire of power, you know, and how if you're powerless, you know, maybe power is a drug in and of itself, you know?
Right.
You know, it's one of these things, you know, everyone complains about powers, no one ever gives them up. You know, one of the most classic qualities of Marvel is, you know, one of my favorite characters is Benjamin Grimm the Thing. You know, who, of course, he is this big orange rock monster, was once human, and he always complains how he is this monster. Now, granted, he's also a monster living in a New York City penthouse with a really hot girlfriend who's a world-famous sculptress. You know, he's also got $1 billion, but, you know, he's a big rock monster, so that's what he complains about. He's also superhumanly strong, and repeatedly throughout the series, he will get rid of his powers, and he will be human again, and then he just starts to miss being the Thing. Because at the end of the day, that superhuman strength is an addiction. What do you want to tell me, Tristan?
It reminds me of the time where the Thing and the lanky guy from the Fantastic Four fought
Oh, the Thing and Mr. Fantastic swap powers?
Yeah, where Mr. Fantastic had the thing power.
Oh, okay.
And went to normal.
Was that in a What If book or?
No, that was actually a part of a show.
Oh, that was the second movie where everyone was swapping powers?
Well, I don't know which one was it, but I remember it.
Yeah, okay.
Wasn't it Michael Chiklis was in the one where he
Yes.
turned back human and then eventually had to go back?
Yeah, well, actually, in the very first one with Michael Chiklis, yes, Doctor Doom cures him. Then Doctor Doom goes to kill the other members of the Fantastic Four, and then he takes his powers back so that he can help them defeat Doom, which is actually, in truth, something that is also from the comic books. I think in like the second or third time they fought Doom, that's something that happens where Doctor Doom cures Ben. But then in order to defeat Doctor Doom, he has to get his powers back, and then he is very mad at Doctor Doom and basically crushes his hands. Really, totally pugns Doctor Doom, which is a great episode of the Fantastic Four. Which, if Comcast doesn't ruin it for everybody, we may yet get again. I don't know if you'd heard, but Comcast is now putting in another bid for Fox's properties.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, NBC. Anyway, they don't do superheroes well. That's all we're gonna say. Anyway, getting back to our story, because we don't want to go too long tonight. We've talked about a lot, but getting back to this actual story, which is a great episode. We get to this point where Trish sees Simpson and confronts Simpson, and she draws the gun Simpson gave her, and she's like, and Simpson in classic idiot territory says, "You're not going to shoot me with that gun," and of course she shoots him with the gun. It doesn't take him down though.
Right, because that takes a lot of gumption to shoot somebody for real. I mean, she tried her best. She shot him in the leg, but when he comes up on her and she points the gun at his head, you can't just do that without thinking,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things I've always felt, that it's easy to say I could kill a person if I had to. I think for most people, it's real hard.
Yeah, I just said I thought. I had a very bad understanding of what that is like, because I went fishing last summer, and I caught a fish, and I wanted to eat it, and so my buddy's a fisherman, and he was teaching me, so I was like, okay, I want to eat it, what do I do? And he's like, just take your knife and stab the fish through the eye, and when he said it, I thought I would have no problem, and then I got up there to the fish, and the act of having to kill the fish was very, very intense and very heavy. I didn't think it would be, but, yeah, it's a lot.
Well, yeah, especially if you're actually stabbing the fish in the eye.
Right. That was.
I guess not for nothing. That's actually being humane. When I was in Boy Scouts, we just, we pulled them out and gutted them, and if their gills were still flapping, we just thought that was funny.
That was hard for me to do. I was like, whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, killing a fish. Imagine if it was a deer.
Yeah,
but not for nothing, if you had to eat, you'd do it. And if you didn't have to eat, well, then that's good. And this goes back again to what we said earlier, just to bring it all back around. When there is not desperation, it's much harder to be evil. Because, the reason why it's hard for you to kill that fish is because, you'd like to eat fish, but it's not like you're... If I don't eat, if it's not a him or me moment with the fish.
Right.
It's some fresh caught fish, that sounds delicious. Right. And now it's like, well, you should put the fish out of its misery, so stab it in the eye.
Right.
Honestly, I think you could just chop its head off, and that would probably put it out of most of its misery itself.
Probably would have been easier to do, too.
Well, maybe. I don't know, man.
Exactly.
When you're actually going in and taking the parts off, truth be told, the fish is going to die of asphyxiation in a few minutes anyway. So your rush is maybe the real problem is you don't need to rush with fish,
Fair enough.
Don't worry. He'll be dead enough. Just give him a minute, He's going to slowly drift off to that eternal slumber in a moment. So,
What did you think of this whole bit with Hogarth?
Oh, this is like my favorite thing when Hogarth gets the hookers.
Right.
Hogarth and the hookers, man. That deserves its own sitcom. Um, I love those hookers. They were some of the best hookers
Right.
I've
They were.
ever
They knew what
seen.
they were doing.
I meant depiction-wise. That
Ah.
they weren't Hollywood hookers.
Ah.
They looked like real women that with put together costumes that have to make that difficult weighing of, gee, should I have crack today or makeup? You know, throwing together clothes that they don't wash. It's all a great set of things that I really appreciated about the way they depicted these women. Right down to when the women are just gabbing around the table in their coke-fueled, wind-up, which, I love, just as a guy who hangs out with strippers from time to time, how honest those scenes seemed. When I've been sitting around the kitchen table hanging out with, my friends who, do cross those lines in that world of business,
Right.
yeah, it's very real, Right
What
now,
I
there's a woman
appreciated
saying,
was
me, it's all about my babies, It's
right.
like, yeah.
What I appreciated was how good they were at their job, at being attentive to what she needed.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll tell you what was the best part of the whole thing is when they get kicked out.
Right.
And
Right.
there's not a bunch of drama or recrimination. It's like, okay. They grab their purse, they got their money, they walk on out. There was no illusion about what this conversation was.
Right.
There was
Even
no
though,
con going on here.
no, but she did. I mean, yeah, they were very straightforward about what it was, but she did take some pleasure at kicking them out as expendable pieces of flesh.
Yeah, and, that would be horrible if that was the first time that it ever happened to them.
Right.
Honestly, it's like,
right.
oh, goodness, after letting me sleep on your silk pillows, I'm being kicked back out to where I was before I got in here. None of these women thought this was going to be their new home. This was a great night of partying with a very rich lawyer, and now they're going to move on with their life.
Yeah.
They did what they did, and now it's done. Now we do the next thing. And that is literally all there was to it. And, this show, like I said, this show really gets a sense of reality in the way it depicts people's emotions and people's characteristics and people's approaches to things. And these are things I like about it. Okay, so final scene, basically,
Jess comes to the movie set,
yes, sees the blood,
Trish's bag, follows the trail of blood, and recognizes that somehow Trish has subdued the crazy monster, Will Simpson.
Yes, and then we find out that Will Simpson isn't the monster.
Right.
The real monster is coming. And Will Simpson tries to fight the monster, but
unfortunately, he's been hobbled by the object of his affections.
Yes, and also, honestly, that was a very disturbing scene when they see his body and his head is turned
the neck
right
is
around.
all. Ugh.
Yeah, that is always a disturbing image. I don't think Will Simpson's coming back. Although you never know, because of course that Frank Simpson is actually Nuke, not Will Simpson. Frank Simpson basically keeps on dying, but then they bring him back together with cybernetics. So,
well, maybe we might get that yet. They already brought him back once, so there is precedent, right?
Exactly. You can bring these guys back from not for nothing. They brought Jess back, I mean, that's the whole idea, is that, you can bring these people back from the dead, maybe, is the whole point of the whole, if nothing else, that's sort of the mad scientist's goal, is how far gone can we fix things from? And if you're our Will Simpson, or I'm sorry, if you're our Dr. Kozlov type character here, maybe the goal is at the start is how do we make people better, and our goal in the end is, you go to that Dr. Frankenstein level, which is, it is anyone can bring something keep something alive or bring something back from the dead, but to create something that has never lived and make it live. That is what I wish to do next. So that is where we're going to leave this tonight's episode, with a monster chasing after Trish and Jess.
Well, the monster sort of runs away, though.
Yeah.
Like, what was the deal with that? Because he kills Simpson, and then supposedly they thought the monster was after Trish, but the monster couldn't be bothered. He jumped right over them, and he was gone. Yeah. And it looked like the monster was wearing a hoodie, so when he first came running at them, I thought maybe that's Simpson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in truth, maybe what you can argue is maybe the monster just didn't see them as a threat.
Huh, interesting.
That Simpson was a threat because maybe Simpson knows more than they do. You know?
Huh. But didn't Simpson say that he heard them talking? They said that they need to get rid of Trish, and that's why he was protecting her, and that according to the conversation with Jess, where she says, oh, maybe he has been protecting you, seems like there might have been incidents where the thing tried to attack her before, and he was able to fend it off.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We're going to have to see. That's how they get you to watch the next episode, Mozz. So, Mozz, any final thoughts for tonight?
No, I'm just, I love this episode as like a exploding point of where the whole story is actually taking off, so I loved it.
Great, and I liked it too. Electric Boogaloo. So let us call this a night. Mozz, how can people find you on the social meds, as they say? The sock meds?
They can find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor, or email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And you can always find me via email at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. Yes, that's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Just like your grandparents did when they used the email. And, of course, you can always follow me on the Twitters, which all the hip young kids are doing nowadays, at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEssser. Look for those two E's right there in the middle for quality. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining Mozz and Chaz. And we really want to be your friends. So join us again next week for the AKA Jonescast. Good night.